Ladies and gentlemen, I am James the Gator Grimm, and you are watching, that's right, 5-Star Jobbers.
What is up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the 5-Star Jobbers podcast. I'm Cody.
And I can smell what The Rock is cooking.
I think a lot of people can smell what The Rock is cooking right now, and I think we might be getting a whiff of possibly the Tribal Chief facing The Rock at WrestleMania.
Or Elimination Chamber.
You think they'll do it? Elimination Chamber?
I mean, they didn't. I mean, it could be anything. I mean, it could be before WrestleMania. It could be after WrestleMania. I don't think they're going to waste that on Elimination Chamber, though. I think they'll put that at WrestleMania. Maybe we should talk about this a little bit later, because I think we could probably dig into this.
Yeah, I agree.
I think the key on this one is philosophy.
Yeah, that's true.
So
anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for listening to our podcast. This is going to be our first ever video episode on our YouTube channel. And also, if you haven't followed us on social media, what are you doing? We've been here for a whole season. This is season 2 now.
Stop being lame.
Exactly. Go follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Also, we've got a YouTube channel. We've got coverage from our live events we went to, from Solid Rock Championship Wrestling, the Guardians Legacy, and Hope Championship Wrestling. But also, more events are going to be coming up. And we'll get to that here in just a little bit. But what we kind of wanted to do to start out the new season, to start out episode 1, with the buzz that's going around about the Iron Claw, which if you haven't seen this movie, you have got to go see it.
Great story, great movie, fantastic acting.
Everybody did a phenomenal job. Zac Efron did a wonderful job portraying Kevin Von Erich, and then I can't remember the other guy's name that played David.
Jeremy Allen White played Kerry Von Erich. I don't know the names of the actors who played David and Mike, but I know that they're like semi-well-known, like rising up actors. I mean, this was a pretty good, well-produced cast. This was not a list of nobodies. I mean, Zac Efron and Jeremy Allen White by themselves are rock stars. And then, was it Lily Allen was Pam, the Pam Atkinson or Pam Von Erich. She was the wife of Kevin Von Erich. So, and A24 was the production company, and I don't know anything they've made recently that hasn't been a blockbuster smash. So
exactly.
This was just, great. Great across the board. Just everything was done really, really well. I mean, you could nitpick a couple things here and there, but overall,
and we will when we get into it.
They did a great job telling the story, and even if you're not a wrestling fan, you can go watch this movie, and it's going to move you.
Exactly. So what we thought that we would do for anybody that's listening or anybody that's listened to us from the beginning, and this is your first time getting into professional wrestling, or this is your first time having any kind of exposure to the business of professional wrestling, we thought that we would kind of do an in-depth look into the story of the Von Erichs and how the tragedies that they've experienced came to fruition and all that went down. So that way, if you wanted to go see this movie, if it's still in theaters by the time you hear this, which I highly recommend you go see this movie, or whether it comes out on any streaming platforms, which I don't know if they've announced anything yet, but I'm sure they probably will at some point.
I believe A24 has announced a partnership with HBO Max.
Okay.
So I don't know if that means this one's going to get fast-tracked to the Max streaming app.
Right.
But essentially the product catalog for A24 Productions is going to be on Max sooner than later. So my guess is that when it is available for streaming, it'll be on Max first and probably at no cost.
So yeah, if you haven't gotten a chance to go to the theaters and see this movie, definitely go check it out. But whenever it becomes available on any streaming platform, definitely go watch it at that point. But what we thought that we would do is kind of do like a moment in history segment, I guess you could say, but we wanted to talk about the Von Erichs for this episode. So
the Von Erichs are one of, if not, so you can sit there and have a conversation about wrestling families. And if you wanted to say the top 3 wrestling families or top 4 wrestling families, the Von Erichs are in that conversation no matter what.
You've
got
question.
The McMahons.
You got the Harts.
You got the Harts, and then you got the Von Erichs. I'm putting that before the Rhodes. I'm putting that before the Grahams. But I'll stand on that because at the end of the day, without world class, you don't have The Undertaker. You don't have Stone Cold Steve Austin. You don't have Booker T. You don't have the Ultimate Warrior.
Like, there's so many that came through world class championship wrestling, but the Von Erichs were the staple of that promotion.
Von Erichs were wrestling in the state of Texas for many, many years, and before wrestling went national and was syndicated, if you were in Texas and you watched wrestling, you were watching world class championship wrestling. And when the Von Erichs were on TV, that was your state star.
Exactly. I mean, they were celebrities in the state of Texas. But to kind of start from the beginning, so the father of the family, Fritz Von Erich, was the one who was mainly have brought the family into wrestling because he was a very big heel during the 50s and 60s.
Real name Jake Atkinson.
Right. Atkinson.
Changes his name to his mother's maternal name, which is Von Erich. And the reason he does this is he's a heel, and he decides the best heel that he could possibly be during his time in the 50s and 60s was a Nazi.
And you probably couldn't get any more hated than to be a Nazi.
I think today that would still be right up at the top of the list of things you'd immediately get heat for. So he was Fritz Von Erich. It doesn't get more German than that. And
exactly.
The crowd did. They loved to hate Fritz Von Erich.
Exactly. And so he developed the move, the Iron Claw, which, if you haven't seen the move, is essentially, you basically take your thumb and pinky and grab the guy's head, but you're squeezing his temple as hard as you possibly can. Doesn't sound like it would hurt because all you're doing is just grabbing a guy's face, but you have one of the Von Erichs put the Iron Claw on you, you're done.
I mean, you got somebody who can lift 300 pounds, somebody like a ranch hand like that who does nothing but tie barbed wire around posts all day long.
Yeah, I would not want
that. Iron Claw can absolutely take you out. I mean, he's squeezing your temporal lobes. That is a nerve hold.
Yeah.
And you know that he's got finger strength. I mean, that was something that they could probably lock in and legitimately take their opponents out with.
Oh, 100%. And so they finally get into the World Class Championship Wrestling, build this promotion, and you have three main people in this family who are the stars of the family.
Put aside, you have the three. They have the tag team of the Von Erichs,
right?
And individually, they were all doing work, and you don't see it so much in the movie, but if you want to talk about the real story of it, of course, the big story with the Von Erichs and the greatest rivalry with the Von Erichs is the Von Erichs versus the Freebirds.
Yes, definitely.
And the Von Erichs,
probably one of the greatest matches that they had at World Class.
Yeah, and the Von Erichs versus the Freebirds is what really gets the sons over. Like, you had Kevin, who was wrestling as a singles competitor, and then when they brought in David and Kerry, it was off to the races, and those were the matches that were doing really big work at the time in the what do you want to call it, mid 70s, early 80s,
right? And
they went all this is World Class was, of course, part of the NWA. But as for those who don't know, with territorial wrestling, the NWA was comprised of a board of people, and some of those people are mentioned in the movie Iron Claw. They're not really stated. I'll say one thing about this movie: they don't go deep in the woods. So if you don't know anything about the Von Erich story, I would encourage you to go online and learn before going to see the movie, because the more you know, the more engaging the subject matter is.
One of the things that I did, and kind of just to refresh my memory on the story and everything, which I recommend you guys do this, is go watch Dark Side of the Ring, because they did an episode on the Von Erichs, and it kind of tells the story of their history and all that went on in their family. So yeah, definitely freshen up on your history of the family and the stories of everything, so that way you're more prepared going into this. So that way you're not totally blind.
Yeah, and so going back to it, WCCW is run by Fritz Von Erich, and Fritz Von Erich, and it comes across in the movie very, very well too, is kind of a hard to work with kind of guy.
Yeah.
And the NWA, like I said, it's comprised of a board of promoters, and they got together and decided, based on ticket sales, based on merchandise sales, based on all these different factors here and there, work rate, whatever. let's also say that it was very political and it's sometimes controversial. The NWA as a whole would decide who would be the champion. And now the champion would be contracted, even though it's regional and they'd go from territory to territory, the champion would be contracted with one of the promotions. So whoever had the star who had the title could have the championship title on every show they put out.
Right.
And that's guaranteed money. That's guaranteed your ticket sales go up, your TV sales go up, everything. And so Fritz's big obsession is to get the NWA title to world class.
Right.
Well, anybody who knows their history knows that the NWA title did not ever spend a lot of time in world class. The NWA title spent a lot of time, really honestly, a lot of time in Jim Crockett.
Exactly.
Between Flair and Dusty and a couple others, and it also spent time in the AWA. But the president of the NWA for many years, Sam Muchnick, and that's it's a name that people don't know about nowadays.
Right.
But go back to the 1980s, and Sam Muchnick would have been a household name in professional wrestling. So it's one of those, in the story. There's a lot of name dropping, but without telling you who the name is. So
exactly.
For those of us who are very inside baseball, it's a lot of fun to watch and see little Easter eggs in the movie. But for people who are not really keen to the wrestling scene, it's still a great movie. It's easily watchable, but there's going to be a lot of little stuff you miss. Not only major plot points, but those finer details.
Exactly.
And so at the end of the, I'll hand it back over to you here. But the core idea of this is that Fritz von Erich's obsession is getting the NWA title to world class and having world class being perceived as the greatest promotion of all.
Right.
And the Von Erichs as the greatest wrestling family of all.
Absolutely. So to kind of introduce you guys to the family and tell you who everybody was. So Kerry was, I guess you could say, he was the star who had the looks, he had the charisma, everything, and eventually he went on to WWF and had a short run there.
The Texas Tornado.
Exactly. Dropped the Von Erich name, was mainly known as the Texas Tornado. Couldn't use the Iron Claw while he was there, but we'll get into that here in a little bit later.
Classic Vince McMahon. Take somebody like that who is a star from another promotion. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tie his hands behind his back, and if he can swim back to the top of the ocean, I might let him live.
Exactly. Classic. And then David was probably the best technician, best performer of the family. There was not a hold that he didn't know. He was a very good technical wrestler of the family.
Yeah, David was he didn't have the stature of Kevin or Kerry. Obviously Kerry had the best physique, and then Kevin, and then David.
Right.
But David was probably the best on the mic.
Yeah,
that was kind of his flair. But yeah, he was great. Being best on the mic, he was also able to sell really well.
Yeah,
and he was able to engage the crowd. So David was he didn't have the work rate. He was a great worker too, but at the same time, he didn't have the. I know. Kerry had the Vince McMahon look.
Right, exactly.
Kerry had the look that Vince, would salivate over, especially, in the 80s and 90s.
Right.
But
big, muscle-bound looking guys.
David's the kind of guy who would have gotten over really well somewhere in ECW in the 90s had he made it to the 90s.
Definitely. And then you have Kevin Von Erich, who I would say is the athlete. These guys were all very well built, really jacked and everything. But Kevin was the athlete. He could do things that not a lot of people could do.
Well, I'll say this too. So Kevin, he's the oldest brother in the story. He's also the oldest brother in reality. Now there was a brother that came before him, and they deal with it in the movie that the oldest brother dies of just childhood.
It was
drowning.
Yeah,
it was a drowning.
He was electrocuted at first, but then he fell face first in the snow and drowned because of that.
And so they mentioned early on in the movie that Kevin is, even though he's the oldest, he's not the firstborn.
Right.
But I will say this: in the movie, Zac Efron plays Kevin, and he does a really good job of playing this part, and he actually does a really good job of lowering his voice to speak like Kevin Von Erich.
Yeah,
Kevin Von Erich has a very low voice. If you ever heard him in any interview,
he's very, I don't want to say soft spoken, but he's very mild with his conversation or with how he talks.
But
today.
But one thing I will say is there's got to be a little bit of creative justice here. Zac Efron gets so yoked for this role that he is clearly Zac Efron is huge in this movie, and he's clearly the most jacked of any of the actors in the movie. But don't let that fool you. Kevin Von Erich was not the most jacked of the Von Erichs.
No.
Carrie was definitely way more jacked. But I guess, Jeremy Allen White couldn't get as jacked as Zac Efron. He's got to keep that chef physique for the bear, because he's going to go back on FX, and he can't be looking like a cook that could cut your head off. So.
Exactly. But yeah, and then so you have Carrie, David, and Kevin, and then you have the two younger brothers, Mike and Chris, who. Mike kind of had a little bit of a run in professional wrestling, but it wasn't very long. And then Chris had
no run,
nothing really. Now he wasn't mentioned in the movie.
No, Chris isn't mentioned in the movie because like you say, he never really launches. At the end of the day, if you go back and look in the history, Chris had a wrestling career purely because his last name was Von Erich.
Exactly.
I think he was like 5'6" or 5'7".
Yeah. Didn't have really much. I think
he had health issues growing up his whole life, so he was just one of his it's an untold sad story, probably of the youngest brother who wanted to be like his brothers but could never keep up.
Right.
And that
was a lot of pressure for both of them, both Mike and Chris.
Yeah, I mean,
trying to live up to that expectation that people had for them because they were part of the Von Erich family.
Yeah.
But, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
But, so they've been in wrestling for a while and they've been traveling all over. And so then the tragedies start to strike. And so.
Yeah, the Von Erich and Freebird rivalry puts them up so high in the wrestling world that the Sam Muchnicks and the NWA heads can no longer ignore the Von Erichs. They're over. And it's time to consider a Von Erich for the title.
Exactly.
And David gets the pull because he's the better talker. He's the better, what do you call it, sports entertainer.
Yeah.
And so David gets the pull, and then they decide, okay, we're going to put you with Ric Flair. We're going to put you in matches with top tier guys all over the country, and then we're going to send you to do a Japanese run in New Japan. Or IWGP.
Yeah.
And that's where things go off the rails. So
when Fritz gets the call in the middle of the night, or whoever it was, I can't remember the name of the promoter who.
It would have been Inoki.
Yeah.
But yeah, David was having issues before he traveled over to Japan, but it wasn't. I mean, they were probably exacerbated by wrestling. But the unfortunate fact of this is that his injury was not really a wrestling injury; no, it was enteritis.
Acute enteritis was basically your intestines ruptured. Essentially.
Yeah, and obviously wrestling could probably exacerbate something like that, but there's also a genetic proclivity towards it. So It's not like there wasn't a botched move. It wasn't, it wasn't.
It's just unfortunate circumstances.
Yeah.
And so, of course, a lot of speculation went out in the media saying that he overdosed because most of the time whenever you hear someone dying in their hotel room, and especially in the professional wrestling world, it was speculated or assumed that it was because of overdose. But if you ever go back and watch Dark Side of the Ring, Bruiser Brody was actually the one who found David in his hotel room. And from the way he was positioned, I'm sorry if this sounds morbid to people, but it looked like he was reaching for the phone to try and either call someone or try and either call 911 or call his family or whichever. But he found him reaching for the phone, and the news went out and people were devastated.
Yeah.
I think the state of Texas was, I don't know if it came to a screeching halt, but I can remember seeing videos and clips of it from whenever I watched Dark Side of the Ring.
Well, if you go back if you go and watch the movie, if you watch the movie, you'll see the memorial for David, and the streets are literally filled with people.
There's thousands of people. Like 4,000 to 5,000 people at least.
Those scenes are not artistically created. Those scenes are actually replicated from the actual memorial itself. There were more than 3,000 people in attendance for David's memorial.
Like they had to put screens or like monitors outside the building for all the people that were lined up, so that way they could hear what was going on or see what was going on. And so, like, these people were literally thought of as celebrities in the state of Texas. Like, that's how much people admired them and loved them. And so, when one Von Erich died, the entire state of Texas was devastated because of this. And so, after David's death, Kerry would be the one to step in on David's behalf and face Flair for the title, for the NWA title.
And now you've got, they'd already been building up a Von Erich to be potential NWA champion. Then you have David die, and so the stakes become even higher for the match that Kerry and Flair have, and it's the event itself, sold out event, tens of thousands of people live in the Texas Stadium?
Yep, Texas Stadium.
The Texas Stadium, and Kerry wins the NWA title from Ric Flair in Texas. I mean, you couldn't
write it. If you ever get a chance to go and watch this match, you need to go and watch it because it will definitely hit you in your soul. Because knowing everything that you know now and then watching this match back, because there were people all over that were like, if this title does not change hands, the state of Texas would have rioted. Yep. So they knew that this title was going to change hands, but they had no idea how much of a pop that this was going to get. Like, go back and watch it.
Not only was it was like David winning the title, from beyond the grave, but it was also the first time in a long time that the NWA title was on a Texas wrestler. And I think it was the first time that the NWA title was on a Texas wrestler in World Class.
Exactly.
So I mean, it was a huge victory. Everybody was over the moon. They were, people were still mourning David, but it gave the family, it gave the fans something to be excited about again.
Exactly. And then things started to take a downward spiral from there. And the culprit of this was the introduction of Lance Von Erich, which in the movie you see like a short snippet of it. It didn't even really introduce him to where he had any lines or anything, but you just briefly see him in the ring. But Lance Von Erich was introduced, and Lance is not a member of the family. This was somebody that they introduced and showed to people like, hey, this is a new Von Erich, or this is...
it was a kayfabe Von Erich. He wasn't an actual Von Erich, but they were trying to bring in another character. You're trying to replace an actual Von Erich, which I don't think they ever should have done.
No. And Kevin was, like, if you go back and listen or watch the episode of Dark Side of the Ring, Kevin was completely against it.
Yeah.
Thought it would not work, thought this was a terrible idea. And
it was.
And for good reason, because the fans knew that this was not legitimate. They knew, they're like, why are you trying to shove this guy down our throat? He's not even really part of your family. And then later on when they, quote unquote, disowned him, the fans were like, well, you're the ones that fed him to us. Why are you all of a sudden not liking this guy?
Yeah,
and so
it was that. I think that kind of speaks to the old promoter mentality versus, in that time during the 80s, the kind of the changing of the guard of professional wrestling as the 70s moved into the 80s, and it's like the sport was evolving, and of course it continues to evolve to this day.
Right.
There are a lot of things that stay true, through the annals of pro wrestling history. But at the same time, promoters that get too stuck in their ways or find one little magic rabbit in a hat and try to keep going to the same hat over and over and over again, that's the problem of that booking.
Yeah.
Is when you think this worked, so this is going to continue to work, and I need this to work over and over instead of just moving on.
Right. Like trying to adapt or evolve with what the situation is that you have in front of you. And so then Lance didn't work out, so now they introduce one of the younger brothers, Mike. And so Mike was one of the younger brothers who, like we said, didn't really have the size and stature of his other brothers.
Well, let's not skip over an event real quick here. After Kerry wins the NWA title.
Oh yeah.
And it's not in the movie. It's presented like it's like same day. I don't believe that it's same day in the actual history, but between Kerry winning the title and the next defense of the title, he gets involved in a drunk motorcycle accident, and
essentially they had to amputate part of his leg.
He lost his foot.
Yeah,
he lost his
it
foot.
wasn't his leg; it was his foot.
And they basically told him, you should never wrestle again. You don't have a foot, so how are you going to do that?
Right.
You're literally a one-legged man in a butt kicking contest. So at that point, they hide it.
Oh yeah, he made the family promise to not tell anybody. They were all sworn to secrecy.
Kerry Von Erich crashes into a tree, goes to the hospital, gets his foot amputated. But because we're in Texas and this is world class, and Fritz Von Erich is who Fritz Von Erich is, there are no medical reports or anything like that released. Obviously, HIPAA and everything, but still, people did not know.
No,
other than the Von Erich family members only. People did not know that Kerry lost his foot in the accident, and people did not know that when he wrestled in WWF as the Texas Tornado that he had no foot.
Exactly. And you could look at it from different angles. You could kind of think that, well, people knew, they would have sympathy for him, and that he would kind of be like an inspiration for some people that say, well,
if he knew, he would
never
had a career, though.
But yeah, exactly. During that time, though, he would have been looked at as a liability or someone that couldn't really do what he could do before. Yeah, that was now because of his injury.
That was many, many years before Zach Gowen.
Exactly. Which if you don't know who that is, go back and watch early 2000s Friday Night SmackDown.
Or don't.
Either one. But Kerry gets injured, but then they introduce Mike. Yep.
And Mike, they'd shown in the story, and they show in the movie that Mike doesn't really want to be a wrestler.
No, in the movie he's more of a musician, and so they bring him into wrestling, they train him and everything, and like we said before, he doesn't really have the size and stature of Kevin and Kerry. He's kind of scrawny looking, and so they've got him in these matches with these guys that are basically just carrying him throughout the entire match. And then eventually Mike dislocates his shoulder during a match, and that's where his health kind of took a downward spiral took a decline.
He's giving it. So in the reality, he's giving a drop kick, and he lands on his shoulder incorrectly, dislocates his shoulder. Really not that big of an injury. Think about separating your shoulder. Finn Balor separated his shoulder at SummerSlam. Was that 2015 or 2016?
I'd say 2015. 2015, somewhere around there.
SummerSlam, let's call it 2015. SummerSlam 2015, Finn Balor separates his shoulder, continues to wrestle for another 30 minutes with Seth Rollins.
And wins the
title. So, dislocated shoulders in wrestling, they happen all the time. But, this is where the whole idea of the Von Erich curse comes, is that, you've got, David dies of enteritis, Jack Jr. dies of getting electrocuted and then drowning, and then now you've got Mike goes in for routine shoulder surgery and goes into toxic shocks, experiences toxic shock syndrome, and spikes 108, 109 fevers, which for those of you who don't know medically, 108, 109 is where you're going to have some kind of a brain damage.
Right.
Those sustained temperatures are your body. So if you go back and watch The Dark Side of the Ring, they tell the really good story of how everybody was praying for Mike to make it, and he does make it, but after something like that, he is not the same.
No, and you can kind of see it, and if you go back and watch the interview or the press conference that they had whenever they were talking about Mike making his return, you can tell that his speech is a little slurred. Something things are not really coherent, or he's not really making sense.
Yeah.
And so if you go back and watch that press conference or watch that interview that he had, it definitely shows that he received some type of brain injury or some type of...
there was definitely brain damage, and at that point he was working with not a full deck.
Exactly. And so then he goes back in the scene, and then from there he's still just going on a downward spiral. He's kind of depressed, dealing with not living up to expectations of people, that he's one of the Von Erichs. And so eventually he commits suicide by overdose. I think in the episode of Dark Side of the Ring, he goes out to his dad's ranch, and then just goes out into a field somewhere, and then
he overdoses on pills, goes out and basically goes to sleep and doesn't wake up.
Right.
And it's all of this is continuing to the line of these boys who are trying to live up to a father's expectation and desire to live vicariously through his sons for the success he was not able to achieve in his own life, which is it's devastating because at the end of the day, they're so, as you're watching the movie too, they do a really good job. There's just so many moments where you can see it's like, if this happened this way, or if this didn't happen right here, everything would have been okay.
Right, exactly.
Like this person would have been fine. This person would have been fine. And I think that's like the journey that Kevin goes through in this picture, because as you're watching this is the Kevin Von Erich story. It's called Iron Claw, and it's the story of the Von Erichs, but obviously the only living son of Fritz Von Erich, Kevin Von Erich, this is his story to tell. And so it's told through his eyes. And you can definitely tell that Kevin, who obviously worked in the writing and the production of this, very much puts in these moments where I think he's probably held on to a lot of guilt in his life, and hopefully, and obviously you can tell that he, through other interviews, that he's been able to let that go and realize that he had no real control over any of those situations.
Exactly.
But you can go back into past interviews and things and hear about him saying this and that, like, had I done this, maybe things would have been different, maybe things would have been better. Like, had I been a better talker, David never would have been in Japan.
And there's a lot of like shoulda, woulda, couldas, but in the end, like, it all happened, and he can't blame himself for that.
No,
like,
he can't.
He had they all had unrealistic. I wouldn't say unrealistic in a sense, but you know what I mean. Like, just a father trying to live vicariously, like you said, through his sons, and trying to set expectations for them that when they didn't meet them or they didn't quite live up to it, then it was met with a lot of negative comments and a lot of just hateful words and everything. But so, and then after Mike passes, Chris, the youngest, joins on the scene, and the movie does not mention him at all. So if you're looking for this in the movie, you're not going to see it. You're not going to see Chris. Chris joins the scene, and it's pretty much the same situation with Mike. He's not really well built like his other brother. He's like, what, 5'7", 5'6" or so?
Yeah, he's short.
He's got a lot of health complications. I think he had asthma and a few other things as well. And so he joins the scene and breaks his arm during a match. And then from there, he just became so depressed. And they also touched on this in the episode of Dark Side of the Ring. I'm glad you mentioned about how Kevin was saying, like, I wish I'd have done this, I wish I'd done that. So he goes over to Chris's place where he's staying at, and Chris is depressed. He's saying that he's going to kill himself and everything. And then Kevin goes, like, don't you do anything crazy. Like, I'm going to go, like, are you going to be okay? He's like, yeah, I'll be fine. I'm not going to do anything. Then as soon as he leaves, he goes back to his dad's house, and he asked, I think in the episode, he asked the question, like, does Chris normally write suicide notes? And then his dad goes, get up there now. He goes back up there, and it's already too late. He sees Chris laying on the floor, gunshot to the head, and he commits suicide.
Yeah.
And then from there, we go to Carrie, and...
Well, I didn't get Carrie's story, takes a little more time. The Mike and David thing happens pretty quickly. Well, Mike, David, and Chris, it's in kind of a closer period of time. And then, of course, with Carrie, he's recovering from an amputated foot, and people, let's say people who aren't named Von Erich didn't know, and so he gets a prosthetic made, and he starts training again because the kind of athlete that he is, and just the way that he pushes himself, he's able to get back in the ring and do it very, very well on one foot. Problem about being on one foot in a prosthetic, though, you're doing a lot of jumping around, you're doing you're lifting a lot of weight, and you're putting a stub, which has a lot of nerve endings in it, on a lot of of weight that's not distributed the way that it's supposed to be distributed. So as Carrie is wrestling, he is continuing to put tremendous amount of stress on his knee joints, his hip joints, his back and everything like that. And so as he is wrestling, he is just continuing to overfill his bump card and
just trying to fight through the pain.
Like many wrestlers of his time, because of that, he turns to pain pills and to steroids and things like that. And I explained this to somebody the other day too, because everybody was talking about steroids and just using steroids to get big and to be jacked up. Don't ever forget that steroids are prescribed on a daily basis to heal.
Right.
The reason, when you take an asthma inhaler or a steroid when you have an infection or something like that, it's to heal you. And so a lot of the steroids, I think there was they were initially a healing medicine, and then they realized, this has the side effect of helping me get really ripped as well.
Right. And so then people started just abusing that.
But then, so people are abusing that, but, he's using steroids and painkillers, and I would say, obviously there's probably some euphoric effects, but I would say that most of these guys that end up getting hooked on this, it doesn't start as chasing the dragon or trying to get that high. It's just trying to make the next show.
Exactly.
And so Kerry is taking pills every day, and he's doing steroids just so that he can make the next show, so that he can go and do whatever he needs to do to make a living for himself, to make his family proud, is what he thinks that he needs to do.
Right.
And
with all that pressure mounted on him and trying to fight through the pain of this injury that he has, it basically just drives him to the point where in the movie they show it as well. I mean, they don't show what actually happened, but they show where he drives out to his dad's ranch and takes the 44 that he gave his dad for Christmas and basically shoots himself in the heart.
Yeah. And they don't really say, they don't mention that. They obviously make it apparent in the movie that Kevin is very mad with his dad because he told his dad not to let Kerry be by himself. But as if you go back and watch Dark Side of the Ring and the story, the thing that blows my mind as a father is you've got two sons that have killed themselves.
3 actually at that time.
Well, no, you've got
because
Mike.
You had David. Well, no, yeah,
David didn't kill himself.
Yeah.
Sorry, my bad. Mike kills himself, and Chris kills himself, and Chris kills himself with a gun. I'm sorry, and I'm a pro gun guy.
Yeah,
but if I had a kid kill themselves with a gun, all my guns would never, ever, ever be out on display.
Same.
They would be under lock and key that only I own the key to. I think that's just good gun safety, period, but I'm not going to get into that. But at the end of the day, you get a kid who kills himself with a gun, why you would ever have guns openly available in your house ever again, one of the things to say, just through the stories it speaks to, is just this family did not, it's like they valued the fame of the Von Erich name more than they valued their own children.
Which is sad.
And that's what led to the demise of their family in the first place.
Exactly. So then these 3 brothers all die of unfortunate circumstances, 3 by suicide and then 1 by enteritis. So then Kerry is pretty much the only one left.
Kevin.
Kevin. Yeah, my bad. So Kevin is the only one left. And one of the things that I wish that they had put in the movie, because it's very sad and very scary to think of, was they talked about the story, because I think his 2 sons, Ross and Marshall, were behind the camera asking him to tell these stories, but they asked him to tell a story about when Grandpa or Fritz pulled the gun on him. Mm-hmm. And like I said, this doesn't show up in the movie, but they talk about it in Dark Side of the Ring. Fritz had developed brain cancer over time, and I think this is when him and Doris split, or they weren't together anymore.
Yeah.
But Fritz had brain cancer, and it was just messing with him and just deteriorating with him. And Kevin walks in, and Fritz has a gun pointed at Kevin, and he makes the statement and says, "You'd kill yourself too if you had the guts." And just hearing Kevin tell this story or talk about that, I can only imagine what was going through Kevin's mind, or what he was feeling, or what was thinking. But Kevin was like, "I'm not going to let brain cancer take me out of this world," because he said to his dad, it takes more guts to live. And he kept yelling at his dad, "Stop pointing the gun at me! Stop pointing the gun at me!" And basically just bolted out of the house before he could do anything.
Yeah. And then so the next steps is as the time goes on in the story of the Von Erichs is that as Fritz is getting older and his health is declining and things like that, and you put in the context. They don't speak to it, but if you're a wrestling fan, the territories are drying up. WCCW is, by the late 80s, early 90s, WCCW is a shell of its former self. They've still got people coming in and out, but they're not making nearly the money they used to because, a little thing called WrestleMania happened in 1984, and it made the WWF a worldwide name and got worldwide syndication and gave the money and the ability for Vince McMahon to go around and buy out territories and buy out talent and create a super promotion that the rest of the guys couldn't compete with. And so it comes to the point where, different promoters are looking to try to buy out other promoters and try to compete with Vince, at least, in some small degree. And that brings in Jerry Jarrett, father of Double J, Jeff Jarrett, J-E, double F, J-A, double R-E, double T. Ain't he great? But, Jerry Jarrett comes in and he basically extends a lifeline to the Von Erich family. And Kevin selling WCCW to Memphis and to Jerry Jarrett, that's pretty much the nail in the coffin of his relationship with his father.
Exactly.
Once again, going to show that the promotion was more important than your own kids. So, Fritz Von Erich, Jake Atkinson, not nice to speak ill of the dead, but not a good person. And his son's blood was very much on his own hands.
Agreed.
So the movie is very tragic in nature, but the way that it ends is very beautiful. And it speaks very much to how Kevin talks in a lot of his interviews of how he's been able to move on from the tragedy of losing basically everybody in his family, and to see the good in life and to be able to value life and to move forward and move on. And I think that message is that's paramount to the whole to everything that the story tells. Is there are always choices, and the choice to value life and the choice to value yourself, and not let anybody else determine your value. That's the key. There's and I won't say it, but there's a moment in the movie where where Kevin is struggling with thinking that he's cursed and that everything he touches is going to turn to death. And he has this moment, and it's a moment of clarity. And I say, it's the moment where he realizes that he's not cursed, that he's got to make choices, and that his choices will determine his life and the life of his family.
Exactly.
So it's a fantastic movie. Zac Efron does an amazing job portraying the emotion but still being Kevin Von Erich, who is a short-spoken guy. He's not a great orator.
Right. I think the thing that really, because if you haven't gone to see the movie, or if you're going to, the ending, I'm not ashamed to say, I'm a grown man, bald like a little baby.
Oh yeah, no,
we're not going to spoil it for you because it'll definitely tug at your heartstrings.
Yeah.
Because I know they also talk about in Dark Side of the Ring, because Kevin makes the statement where he says, the thing that got me the most, where he says, I used to be a brother, but now I'm not anymore. But whenever he's got his two sons, Ross and Marshall, with him, they have a little moment at the end, and it's like I said, it tugs at your heartstrings, and it's amazing just to see him come to that realization that it's like you said, it's about choices. It's not about a curse. It's not about bad luck or anything. It's all about choices.
Yeah.
And so it's great to see now, because his two sons, Ross and Marshall, are the ones that are pretty much carrying out the legacy and still wrestling and doing a phenomenal job.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first time I got to see them wrestle was actually when they were part of Impact at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, I think it was like a Father's Day episode, or it was around Father's Day. But, of course, Kevin Von Erich was in the audience, and it was Ross and Marshall going up against Jesse Goddard, I think.
Jesse Goddard's, okay.
And then DJZ, or as he is in WWE right now,
Joaquin Wilde.
But yeah, then of course you see the moment where Kevin jumps in the ring, puts the iron claw on DJZ, and so just to see his two sons living out the legacy, and of course now you see Marshall's the one who wrestles barefoot like his dad.
Mm-hmm. And they actually had a tag team match on AEW. Just I guess maybe not last Dynamite, but maybe the Dynamite before.
Right, and now they're wrestling with Ring of Honor.
Yep.
And so it's great to see that his sons are carrying out the legacy, and that Kevin's living this amazing life now. And if, like we said before, you've got to go check this movie out. Chavo Guerrero was the wrestling stunt coordinator of this, and I think he did a phenomenal job.
Yes, he did. He did a very good job. My only critique, and I'm going to say it very succinctly, and if you want to move on, we can move on.
Okay.
But whoever they got to play Ric Flair, you done messed up, Aaron.
Yeah.
That was the worst Ric Flair impersonator I have ever seen in my... Like, where was my call?
Exactly.
I can do a better woo than that guy. Woo! Like, come on.
We all
woo!
could. Yeah.
This guy goes, woo!
It was like surfer dude kind of woo. Like, woo!
Woo!
Like, no.
Yeah. If Ric Flair was a bleach blonde Californian... Yeah, and they take a great Ric Flair promotion. You know, is it my fault that I wear alligator shoes? Is it my fault that I look this good? Is it my fault that I'm... You take a great promote. You take one of Ric Flair's, just best promos, and you make it dog crap.
Exactly.
And let that be a lesson to the actors or to the world that just because the words are written down for you doesn't mean you can deliver the line correctly.
Exactly. You've got to portray the character.
But great movie, terrible Ric Flair.
Yeah, 100%. All right, John, you ready for some reviews?
Let's do it.
All right. So, high spots this week. Going through, I put down quite a few high spots. What am I saying? Hot spots before? I don't know.
You had a lot of high spots?
Yeah, a lot of high spots. But,
somebody else is going to California.
But anyway, it was tough for me to try and pick one because I didn't want to go with the obvious that we mentioned before. Of course, the Rock promo was absolutely awesome.
Well, we're not supposed to go with the obvious crap.
Well, I didn't want to go with the obvious. I mean, you're more than welcome to pick that one for yours if that's what yours is. But I didn't want to go with the obvious one. So I put down a few on here. The one that I thought was pretty interesting was the return of AOP.
Yeah, that was a good return. And, the return of AOP with...
Karrion Kross.
It's a good-looking faction. If they do it right,
If they do it right, this has the potential to be probably one of the greatest three-person groups in a while.
Well,
could dominate.
It makes you think, okay, if the bloodline is coming to an end, who's going to be the next dominant faction on SmackDown? Sign me up for some Karrion Kross and AOP.
Because, you got Scarlett Bordeaux at ringside, and then now you have Paul Ellering.
Pretty Paul.
Gosh, seeing him beside Karrion Kross and Scarlett, I was like, it's happening. It's happening. But yeah.
I can see you in your room.
I was like, yes.
Poor Maddie.
Hey, she loves seeing me react to it.
Right on.
But another one that I thought was interesting was the, not Impact, what am I talking about? The AEW debut of the Virtuosa, Deonna Purrazzo.
I was actually a big fan of this, and I think that if you go on the dirt sheets right now, you're going to read a lot of mixed reviews of her debut, and you're going to hear some people talk about how she was stumbling over her lines. You know what I loved? So if you were watching it, you could see why she was stumbling over her lines. She was holding back tears.
Exactly. Like, she's in her hometown.
She's debuting in her hometown, on a televised product. And yeah, she's been on televised products before. I mean, she's been on AEW before. She's been on NXT. She's been on in Ring of Honor. She's been, this is not a new girl by any means. She is well seasoned, multi-time women's world champion. She is the Virtuosa. She's fantastic. But this moment, you could tell, just meant a whole lot to her to debut in New Jersey, and I mean to come out to the fanfare that she came out to, and the crowd behind her.
It's understandable.
I mean, let her be a human for goodness sake. I mean, she was, she has to sit there and take it in that moment. As a human being, you only get so many moments. I mean, some of us never get moments like that.
Exactly.
So she's taking it in and she's delivering her lines, but I liked that. I like the humanity. I like somebody who is emotional. And you look at a lot of wrestlers. Some of the best wrestlers of all time are the people who are emotional and take the moment that they're in for what it is.
Exactly.
I mean, Ric Flair alone is probably one of the most emotional professional wrestlers of all time, and he cries like a baby. But Deonna coming back was or debuting and declaring herself all elite is fantastic. And some people were disappointed because it wasn't Sasha.
Well, here's my thing with that. Like, honestly, I think if the money's right, Sasha will go back to WWE.
I think Sasha will go back to WWE if the money is right. I think it's very highly likely that we see her debut at the Royal Rumble. But here's my thing, and this is a hot take. Sasha Banks isn't worth the money.
No, she's not. I agree, because even if she does go back to WWE and say she either comes close or wins the Royal Rumble, like, why would you put something in the way of having Jade Cargill come on the scene and then make a huge impact with her debut in the Royal Rumble?
Absolutely. I mean, Jade Cargill is definitely not at the work rate of a Sasha Banks right now.
No.
But she looks fantastic. She talks very well on the mic. And in less than...
There's just one line that she'll have to cut, but,
But I'm just saying, like, even when she was in AEW, like, within 1 to 2 years of training and being in the business, she's very fluid in the ring.
Absolutely.
And being a bigger girl, she doesn't need to be, a cruiserweight that bops and, flies all over the ring.
Right.
But let me just I'll ask the question. Did WWE miss a beat when Sasha left?
No. Like, they kept going on, because I mean, that's the thing about WWE is that
there's always someone behind you.
Yeah, there's always somebody that they can put ahead, and there's always someone that they can push, regardless of if one of their top people leaves. Because I mean,
well, like that is true. But it's like let's look at this through the lens of a couple different people. Like you couldn't replace a Stone Cold. You can't replace a Rock.
Right.
And anytime they come back, they don't have to do anything but show up, and they're going to get screamed and yelled. Same thing with the John Cena. You can create a new star, but you can't create a new character that is beloved by the people that they associate with.
Right.
And if you look at a lot of wrestlers who have left, like an Edge. Edge leaves, and had Edge not been gone already for 10 years, it would have. I mean, if we were talking like 2010 Edge leaving and going to another promotion, that would have left a huge hole.
Oh, 100%.
In the WWE. When CM Punk left, it left a huge hole in the WWE. When Daniel Bryan, had Daniel Bryan not been gone and only had just come back before he left again, it would have left a huge hole in the WWE. When Sasha Banks left, it left a small hole.
Right.
And the hole was very easily filled.
What, a couple months or so, or a few months?
People can sit there and talk about how great Sasha is and what a great worker she is, and how she's always had to play second fiddle to Charlotte and Becky because of backstage politics. No, she plays second fiddle to Charlotte and Becky because she doesn't make the fans feel the way that Charlotte and Becky make the fans feel.
Right.
Charlotte, whether she's a heel or a face, can connect with the crowd and can deliver fantastic matches. Yeah, Sasha Banks can deliver fantastic matches, but she never and she's the boss, but she never makes you like, I never connected with Sasha. I never felt bad for Sasha.
Right.
Even when she was a heel, I didn't really care about Sasha winning or losing. I don't like, sometimes I think people decide that something sucks, so they're gonna want that to be good because it's like a manipulation. Like, we want you to push the thing that sucks so that we can feel validated that we have control.
Exactly.
Sorry, you don't have control. She sucks. She's not that great. She's a great worker, fine, but she's not worth $1 million.
Exactly.
And if the WWE pays her $1 million, I would really like to see them get the ROI on that. I don't think it's there.
It's not there. No, for sure. But yeah, and then of course the obvious high spot is the Rock promo. I mean,
absolutely.
Hopefully, and I think it's going to happen.
This is when we need to talk. This is where we need to get to talk about. So everybody's been talking about it since Monday. Since Monday, it's all, well, what about Cody? Is Cody not going to finish the story? Da 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 da. The Rock coming back and saying that he might want a spot at the head of the table is absolutely a tip of the cap that there's going to be some kind of a match between The Rock and Roman. We've been waiting for that for like 3 years.
Absolutely.
But here's the thing I don't like, as I read these dirt sheets, it's like, here's this thing that kind of gets under my craw. And maybe I'm an idiot here. Maybe.
You said it, not me.
Why do people think The Rock's winning?
Well, here's the thing. I don't think he's going to win the title. I think
exactly.
I don't think he's going to win the title. I think he's going to cause Roman to lose it, whether it's at the Royal Rumble or whether it's at Elimination Chamber or wherever. But the match is going to happen at WrestleMania. I'm convinced it's going to be WrestleMania.
Okay, and I definitely think that a match the caliber of The Rock versus Roman Reigns needs to be at WrestleMania.
Like, that's your night one main event.
But it doesn't need to be for the title.
No, it doesn't.
And that's everybody's thinking, oh, well, Roman's gonna, fight The Rock and beat or he's gonna fight Cody and beat Cody and then face The Rock at SummerSlam. No, you're not gonna do The Rock and Roman at SummerSlam.
No,
and you're not gonna have
work, but that's a WrestleMania match.
But and Triple H is a smart enough guy. You're not gonna put the strap on a guy who's barely even part-time. I mean, he's once a year at best.
Right.
I mean, he's got a very busy schedule with all his acting, and he's got the XFL, USFL merger that's coming up right now. There's no way he's
Which I'm super excited about, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about it, too. Last year, I kept saying over and over, I was like, why are we having 2 minor leagues? Why
just put them together?
All for one. Like, it makes a better product.
Stallions, by the way. Got to give a shout out to my home state of Alabama. So
yep, yeah. Well, that's the only football team you can cheer for the rest of the while here. Your boys couldn't get it done against the Big Ten team. Losers. I'm telling you, Georgia should have been in that playoff, and so should Florida. I mean, Florida State would have gotten destroyed just like we destroyed them 63-3. But at the end of the day, both teams that the college football playoff decided to put in instead of the more deserving teams lost in the semis. And it just goes to show that those CFP board members had their head up their keisters.
Exactly.
But back to the point.
Yeah.
The Rock does not beat Roman Reigns
for the title.
No. And the thing is, if Roman is going to continue doing this, why would that ever make sense?
It doesn't.
You give a guy the most historic title run in the last 30 years of the business, and you're going to have him lose for a one-off? No. So at the end of the day, yeah, you take the title off of Roman, and if you see what happened on SmackDown here with that no contest, and which by the way, that's my botch.
Oh, really?
Because it's a stoppage on a no disqualification match. So, like, it'd be one thing if they, like, had said something at the beginning, there is disqualification, but for, like, I don't know, the last decade, triple threat matches and fatal four-ways don't have disqualification.
See, and my botch for that is different from that. Like, that's part of it, but the other one is that Nick Aldis didn't get on the mic and say, well, congratulations, now you have a fatal four-way at the Royal Rumble. Like, the pop that he would have gotten from that would have been incredible.
Yeah, honestly, SmackDown as a whole was kind of a botch. It was not a great SmackDown.
Yeah.
But no, they're doing this. They did it poorly executed. But you basically have a situation where Roman can lose the title without being pinned.
Right.
So come Royal Rumble, you've got an opportunity for Roman to lose the title without being pinned, and then either go up against somebody and try to win the title, and then he's distracted by The Rock. and then you've got The Rock versus Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. The only thing I have a problem with on that, and maybe they'll shift it a little bit, is, you know, I figured they were going to work towards like a tribal combat between Jay and Jimmy.
And that would be good.
But you can't have two tribal combats in one WrestleMania.
No.
So maybe they're going to wait on Jimmy and Jay for a little while.
Maybe The Rock and Roman's not going to be tribal combat. Maybe.
I mean, if he's going to sit at the head of the table, wouldn't you think it'd have to be?
Maybe, but they might have some kind of different angle that they might do with it. But I'm not sure.
Yeah, we're armchair booking at this point. But
exactly.
at the end of the day, yeah, anybody who thinks that The Rock is going to beat Roman Reigns for the title at WrestleMania doesn't understand how the business works. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
But Cody's going to finish the story. My guess is he finishes the story with Randy.
Yeah, exactly. So that, I mean, and a lot of people say that, and we've seen things on the dirt sheets of how people will think the booking is going to go with Roman and The Rock facing each other, and then you got Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes for the Universal title or the Undisputed WWE Championship, whatever they call it, and the names change so much that I can't even keep up with it.
Let me do my Paul Heyman. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul Heyman. I am the advocate for the reigning, defending, undisputed WWE Universal Heavyweight Champion Roman Reigns.
Yeah, that's what it is. And then you have CM Punk and Seth Rollins. That's going to be WrestleMania. 100%.
Yeah, I mean, CM Punk versus Seth Rollins. That's night one. And then if you have Rock and Roman, that's your main event.
Yeah.
Sorry, Cody. You'll finish the story. I don't know that you'll finish the story on the main event.
Maybe that one will be the main event for night one. Well, I don't know. We'll just have to see how it goes.
I guess it could be the main event for night one, but then that means that CM Punk once again does not main event WrestleMania. And it's very possible that happens, and that's Triple H's just little way of, you know, giving CM Punk an inch, but not giving him the full foot.
Exactly. Yeah, so, and then I'm not really going to go in my botches that much. It was just like little things here and there, but one of my botches was the Daniel Garcia sharpshooter that he attempted on the announce desk, where they both slipped off. And so yeah. I was like, it would have been good if I don't know if the announce desk was not sturdy enough, because usually AEW's announce desks are very sturdy. Like, you can't break them like WWE's desk.
Yeah, no, I've seen they powerbombed a guy on there before and it didn't budge.
Right.
Prop error.
Yeah. And then the other one I had was Nia Jax's powerbomb, where she tried to do a sit-out powerbomb, but eventually she sat down, but didn't slam Becky down at the same time. So it was pretty much just sit down and then boom. And you can see Becky bounce her head off the back of the canvas.
So, yeah, that's a botch in the sense that it was on camera and it was obvious that the move was protected. But I actually was watching that, and I smiled, because that's the first time I've ever seen Nia Jax protect the person she's in the ring with.
I don't know.
She takes it correctly. She just doesn't time it right. At the end of the day, she's doing the sit out powerbomb, and she's supposed to hit her butt first. She's supposed to pause the momentum. You know, her hitting her butt first allows her to regain control of the momentum, and so it's not just gravity and complete control at that point. And so that is her being able to pull back on the move at the last second and have it be a little bit easier on Becky Lynch.
Right. Maybe that's just me being hard on Nia Jax every single week, as I usually am.
That's be hard on Nia Jax. Like I said, I'm not changing my opinion on Nia Jax by any means. But it's funny that you see that and you're totally entitled to your opinion about the botch, because it is a botch. It wasn't timed right, and it showed. It's like a kick that doesn't land.
Right.
It doesn't make the business look good when you see something like that. But at the end of the day, no one got hurt. And the fact that Nia
in that moment,
yeah,
because eventually she actually does bust her nose open, but
I think that was intentional.
Oh yeah, I mean it was.
That was intentional, and that was also. I mean, when's the last time you saw anybody get color on a WWE Raw?
It's not very often.
Like that. That tells me that Vince is gone. Kevin Dunn, hallelujah, is also gone.
Yes.
And you've got KO, the company that is the UFC, WWE. They're probably wanting the product to be more realistic, have a little bit more of an edge. And so there you go. You got Becky Lynch. I mean, whether it was a hard way or, I don't know how you bleed out the nose other than, just take a tap. So I'd say a hard way. But color nonetheless on WWE in the first time in a long time, and I think is intentional color.
Yeah.
So no, I don't like.
I'm here for it.
I didn't like the match. It was still clunky. Nia Jax is still the worst wrestler in WWE. But the fact that she actually, protected Becky on a powerbomb, maybe she's learning. Maybe she can be taught.
Hopefully. But anyway, guys, that's our episode, the first episode of Season 2, and our first video episode on here. So like we always say, thank you guys for listening. Go and check us out on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and we've got our YouTube channel. There will be more segments that will be coming up, and we'll have more to talk about in future episodes. Put it away. That's not happening.
But it's Season 2.
Still not going to happen. Put it away. You and Derek can do that all day long.
We will.
I will not be.
Live.
I will not be participating in that. But also, we want to mention a couple things for you guys. We have some upcoming events that we're going to be at. DCCW, February 10th. Breaking Down the Walls is the name of the event. If you're in the area, McClenny, Florida, it's going to be at the Baker County Fairgrounds, February 10th. Go check it out. We will be doing live commentary there. We're excited to get to see all the guys there, all of our favorite wrestlers and everything, and hopefully meeting some new people while we're there. Another one I want to make mention of is a little bit further away, but March 2nd. NWA, for the first time in probably over 10 years or so, over a decade, is going to be doing a televised event. NWA Hard Times. March 2nd, Dothan, Alabama, at the Dothan Civic Center. Information on that, you can message us, or you can message our friend Justin Overstreet, who we had on the podcast about maybe a few episodes ago or so.
Justin Overstreet. You can see him as Justin Overstreet on Facebook, on Instagram. You can reach out to us and reach out to Justin, or you can reach out directly.
We'll put it on our social media so that way all of you guys can go and check it out. But like we always say, guys, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for doing all that you do for us. But as always, keep it 5 stars.